Sports governance. Sports awareness. Sports accessibility. Sports facilities development. Sports linkages. Institutionalization of the Philippine Sports Institute. Legislative initiatives and interagency collaborations. Bahagi na ng buhay nating mga Pilipino ang sports. Mula sa panahon ng unos, sa tamis ng tagumpay, sa kabila ng pagbabago ng buhay, ang Philippine Sports Commission ay patuloy na magigilingkod sa sambayanan at atletang Pilipino.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to the webinar, Introduction to Sports Mediation, Win-Win for All. My name is Geraldine Bernardo. I'm an accredited mediator at minsan po ay naging national athlete po for the Dragon Boat team. So alam po natin sa isang organisasyon, tulad ng sports, ay hindi po nawawala ang di pagkakaunawaan, some conflicts, and some disputes. Now, my job for today is to show you that there is a better way to resolve these disputes through mediation. So, let us review first kung saan po ang mediation dito sa sari-saring methods ng pagresolba ng mga disputes or tinatawag nating alternative dispute resolution. So, pwede siyang informal, tulad itong negotiation between two people. But on the other side, on the extreme side of that spectrum, ay meron tayong litigation kung saan merong judge na naka-appoint para pakinggan ang mga kaso ng mga partido. So as long as you go through the spectrum from the informal, mas nagiging formal, in which case meron ng iba na magde-decide para sa inyo. Now, in the middle, we have what you call mediation and arbitration, wherein meron din isang third party na didinig sa inyong issue. Pero in the case of mediation, may tinatawag kaming mas win-win ito dahil ang trabaho po ng mediator is to check, to resolve, to see the interest of each party para magkasunduan, no? But in the case of arbitration, now the arbitrator has to look at the merits of the case, kung ano man yung ebidensya, sino ang tama, sino ang mali. So in this situation, meron talagang mananalo at may matatalo. For the purposes of this webinar, we will discuss solely on mediation. Therefore, our session takeaways for this webinar is, let me explain to you the concepts. Ano ba talaga ang mediation? Ano ang mga benepisyo nito? At the same time, I will also talk about the different types of mediation and how we can apply this in sports-related issues. And finally, what are the goals and steps of the mediation process? In the event na kayo ay dadaan sa ganitong proseso, anong aasahan yung mangyayari dito? So let us first define mediation. Ayon sa Republic Act 9285, an act institutionalizing alternative dispute resolution system in the Philippines. So ang mediation dito ay sinasabi nila ay isang voluntaryong proseso in which there is a mediator selected by the disputing parties who facilitates communication and negotiation. Sa formal na, negotiation na pinag-usapan natin earlier, pwede kayong dalawa, pero in this case, there is now a third person or a third party. This third party or mediator will now assist the parties to reach a voluntary agreement using certain tools and techniques kung saan siya na-train. No? So the general features of mediation are this. Mediation is voluntary. Voluntaryo kayong pumunta sa pagdadalo sa session ng mediation, walang pilitan, bukal ang loob nyo. The mediation procedure can remain confidential. Kayo lang nakakaalam kung anong mga pinag-usapan. And it is non-binding. Meaning to say, walang legal process na nangyari dito. Bagamat walang legal process na nangyari dito, it doesn't mean to say na hindi nyo itutupad yung mga agreements nyo. So whatever agreements you come up with, it is the duty of the parties to follow, to abide by these agreements. Ngayon, yung mediator na kukunin nyo ay isang trained, qualified, and neutral person selected by the disputing parties. Pero may mga pagkakataon na i-appoint siya. Kasi minsan pag galing ito sa korte or hindi nagkaayusan kung sino ang mediator, then the mediation rules can allow for a mediator to be appointed. And the job of the mediator is to assist the parties in reaching this voluntary agreement. Now, a mediator is authorized, therefore, by the parties to conduct the mediation in the manner that he or she feels will best serve and promote settlement. So may diskarte din po ang mediator. So siya na po bahala because siya ay may kaalaman, may karunungan at binigyan niyo siya ng authorization. So siya po ang pwede rin mag-decide kung paano itutuloy ito. So as a facilitator, siya ay mag-guide lang sa discussion, will probably present questions to help extract the issue. And he or she can perform an evaluative role. So tutulungan niya yung mga parties kung ano yung mga pros and cons of certain options at kung ano man ang nilabas na mga discussions. No? Now, ang mediator can also decide that there might be other ways to resolve this dispute. So kung nakikita niya mediation is not working for the parties, then she could recommend na, sige, iangat na natin to, i-elevate natin ito sa susunod na dispute resolution process, which is the arbitration. Now, the mediator, tandaan po natin, ay hindi po siya maaring magbigay ng advice. Maingat po ang mediator sa ganyan. At hindi rin siya pwede magbigay ng solusyon. Kailangan po yung solusyon ay manggagaling sa mga partido mismo. And I think with that, there will be more compliance kasi nanggaling sa inyo. Now, may tinatawag na commercial mediation. And a commercial mediation is one that arises dahil sa mga business contracts o kung saan may transaction. That is a commercial mediation. Ang mga examples nito ay mga sports contracts, whether between athletes, agents, or companies, at saka mga sponsorship or endorsement contracts. Kasi may mga exchange and there's a business exchange. Now, pwede rin ito mag-undergo ng mediation. So you could settle your dispute out of court using a third-party mediator. So there have been many cases where sports issues were used and resolved using mediation. At ito ay mga ibang examples lang, no? Hindi ito complete list. So you could use mediation for member complaints on discrimination or probably if there's any harassment issue. And like I mentioned earlier, from issues arising from contracts and agreements. And also, are there any issues regarding selection, appointment, employment within the organization ay pwede rin dalhin sa mediation. There could be some leadership issues, rights or entitlements to govern the sports or competitions ng sport organization na yon. Ngunit, hindi po kasama sa sport mediation ang mga doping cases, ang mga match fixing, and corruption. These are exclusions in sport mediation. Now, there are several types of mediation na maaring mangyari at isang paraan is that actually, kung sakaling ang kaso nyo ay nakarating na sa korte, the judge can decide to say that maybe let's try mediation first bago nyo ituloy-tuloy sa litigation. So, pwede siya mag-appoint, sabi sa inyo, okay, I'm appointing a mediator at dun muna kayo, mag-mediate. Meron din tinatawag ad hoc mediation at ginagawa lang to kung kinakailangan lang po. So, that means when needed. Institutional mediation is any mediation process conducted under the rules of a mediation institution. Like in this case, the Philippine Dispute Resolution Center Incorporated is such an institution that can carry out mediation as well as arbitration. So there are three ways to go into this institutional mediation, and one of which is future dispute. There has to be a prior mediation agreement. Ibig sabihin sa kontrata pa lang, nilalagay nyo na itong kasulatan o itong agreement tulad nito, what we call ang model PDRCI Sports Mediation Arbitration Clause na imbes na sasabihin nyo, dadalhin natin to sa korte ng kung ano-anong syudad yan, ito na lang. The parties shall resolve any dispute, controversy, or claim under this contract by mediation pursuant, ibig sabihin, alinsunod sa sport mediation rules na ginawa ng Philippine Dispute Resolution Center Incorporated. At itong sports mediation rules were already drafted from many references that we have seen from all over the world that are being used. And therefore, there's also an additional clause that says if there is no settlement within 30 calendar days, because alam natin ang mga issues sa sports ay kailangan mabilisang maresolba. So we have a time period of within 30 days from the time you started the mediation process, or kung meron mga agreed upon na mas mahaba o mas maikli sa 30 calendar days, yan ang susundan natin. At pag hindi ho ito natupad or na-resolve in the number of days, na pwede ito i-elevate sa susunod, which is arbitration. In which case, ang sport arbitration rules naman ang ipapairal. Ang pangalawang way to go into the institutional mediation is through, kung sakaling may existing dispute na, now the parties themselves can agree to undergo mediation, in which case they have to come up with an agreement. And the proposed agreement will be like this. We, the undersigned parties, agree to submit to mediation in accordance with those same mediation rules ng PDRCI, at i-explain nyo pa dito, ito ang dispute. So you will describe the dispute. Secondly, you could also say where the mediation is supposed to take place. Ngayon sa PDRCI po, meron po kaming mga rooms doon na kung saan pwedeng i-hold ang mga mediation meetings ninyo. The language to be used can also be specified. English, Tagalog, Taglish. You can say that as well. And the last way to go into the institutional mediation is through a unilateral request. So merong isang mag-i-initiate muna. Kasi sometimes in the absence of an agreement, that party can go to PDRCI and say, I want to request for a mediation. And can you, PDRCI, reach out to the other party to request or invite that party to come under mediation under those mediation rules. So here is a typical process. The initiation of the mediation starts when you request, the party requests for a mediation to the PDRCI. Ngayon, dun sa request, ilalagay ang mga detalye, and we have forms for this. There are forms so that you can describe the dispute, ano yung mga detalye, kung may pera ba involved, ilagay na rin ng pera involved, who are the parties involved, ilagay na rin ng mga contact details nila, ipakita rin ang copy of the clause kung meron man na kung saan nakasulat na you are submitting to the mediation rules. Isama nyo na rin yan. And out of the panel of mediators that the PDRCI has, ilagay na rin ang mga isa, dalawa, or whatever choice you have to become the mediator. Ngayon, ang assessment ay uumpisahan ng PDRCI, the assessment and notice. They will check the details that you wrote and to check whether angkop po ito sa mediation rules ng PDRCI. Ngayon, pag katanggap-tanggap naman ang scope at ito ay alinsunod sa mga rules, then PDRCI will proceed to notify the two parties, and within 3 days, dapat makatanggap ng acceptance nitong request for mediation at pag-approve sa mga nakasaad diyaang mediator. And after which, there is a filing fee. Now, sometimes may agreement kung sino magbibigay ng filing fee. Pwede sa dalawang party, pwede from some other funding institution. Now, the termination of that mediation process happens if the party happens to not reply to this request in a matter of 3 days. Pag nangyari po yan, then PDRCI has to inform the initiating party that its case closed or the file is closed. They cannot proceed. Pero kung sakali naman nag-agree naman ang mga parties to proceed mediation, therefore, we come to the conduct of the mediation at sino po dapat ang nandoon. Obviously, the parties involved as well as the designated mediator or mediators, kung sakali dalawa man sila. Should the lawyers be there? The lawyers can be involved indirectly, not within that mediation process. So, ang mga lawyers, nandiyan sila, in between sessions, maybe you want to go out, step out, consult with the lawyer, and then step back into your session, or you could also consult them at any time, but they will not be involved directly in the mediation process. Now, the mediator conducts the mediation as she or he feels is proper. Hihikayatin din niya yung mga parties to cooperate, to trust the process, to give a safe and open space for them to really bring out their feelings, their interests, and emotions, no? Pero all in all is to keep the conversation open and free, to allow the parties to speak. Now, the termination of mediation, pag nagkaroon na ng agreement and settlement, magkakaroon ng report si mediator, ilalagay kung anuman mga napag-agrihan, at ito ay pipirmahan, babasahin syempre muna ng mga parties, and then to sign. This is final and binding upon the parties. It means to say you have to follow what you have agreed upon. Now, let us make a case study here. This is an athlete versus coach dispute. This is based on an actual case. And this is a typical scenario as well, wherein the dispute could be between a world-class athlete versus his coach. Baka meron silang hindi na pagkakaunawan, sa training, sa pag-select, sa paglalaro, no? And so much so that nagkakaroon na daw ng effect kahit sa moral ng team nila. Dahil nakikita nila nag-aaway ang coach and athlete, pati sila naapekto, no? So, in this case, the performance director na kasama nila also tries to intervene pero hindi siya naging successful. Now, therefore, they decided that probably this is best to be given to a mediation institution. So the appointed mediator comes over, explains the benefits, explains the process, at napag-agrihan naman po ng mga partido, ng athlete and coach na magsasubmit sila dito sa isang mediation agreement. Ang nangyari, yung mediation at pagdesisyonan na gagawin sa isang neutral venue. And the mediator also decided to conduct the meetings whether together or whether one by one. Nasa sa kanya po yan. Because of the success of the mediation, ay umabot naman sila sa isang magandang settlement. The results, total time to take to solve the case was just about 24 hours. No? Aside from that, this is just a reference, no? But they could have spent much more on lawyers' fees, acceptance, appearance, yung biyahe. Instead, they really saved a lot and the mediation only cost around 20%. Now, other benefits and outcomes were achieved. The athlete and coach stayed kasi kung hindi, baka isa sa kanila ay umalis na. In the end, they both decided to stay and keep the team together, work together. There was a joint statement released that the case is closed, solved na, whatever that was. There was also agreements on future behavior and conduct. Minsan talaga sa isang organization, di mo talaga makikita o mafo-forecast kung ano man ang maaari maging issue. So, as it comes along, then you might have to draft new guidelines on conduct, on behavior, para in the future maiwasan po itong mga pangyayari. And finally, they even developed an informal mechanism na kung sakaling may mag-deviate, may maglihis doon sa mga agreed upon conducts and behavior rules, na pwede rin sila mag-usap bago nila idulog mismo sa mediator. So, pwede na rin sila magkaroon ng mekanismo. In the end, both a win-win situation for all. So, I hope I was able to tell you the benefits of sport mediation. For one, they're definitely more cost-effective. Mas mura po siya sa litigation. Mas mabilis ang settlement, 30 days or less. Now, you could have very flexible arrangements, agreements. You don't have to be very legal or very formal. And ang maganda dito, dapat katanggap-tanggap ang mga agreements sa isa't isa. And doing this ensures that there is a higher level of compliance. The parties are more likely to agree and to follow. Kasi talaga naman maganda ang naging proseso. There is a great degree of control by the parties and these remain confidential. And most of all, they preserve ongoing relationships. Napakaliit po ng mundo ng sports at mahirap po pag meron po tayong di pagkakaunawaan o kasamaan ng loob sa isa't isa. So mas maganda na po ang sports mediation. At sana naman po I was able to convince you to try the mediation process for your sports organizations. On behalf of PDRCI and thanks to the Philippine Sports Institute, maraming salamat sa inyong pagpapakinig.
Bahagi na ng buhay nating mga Pilipino ang sports. Mula sa panahon ng unos, sa tamis ng tagumpay, sa kabila ng pagbabago ng buhay, ang Philippine Sports Commission ay patuloy na magiging lingkod sa sambayanan at atletang Pilipino.